DjangoProject.com is, of course, the home base for the Django framework. Now, if you ever need things answered or questions or something like that, and you want to read up more on Django, this is definitely the place to go. So you go to documentation, you can read throughout this whole thing. This does cover things in more detail. Now, however, tutorials like this one or all the other ones on codingforentrepreneurs.com will show you actually how to implement several parts of the Django framework. So just keep those things in mind. And of course, if you have any questions or anything like that, you can go to codingforentrepreneurs.com and contact us. Or you could just send me an email at codingforentrepreneurs@gmail.com or message on one of the videos or something like that. Okay, cool. So now that we've got that out of the way, I'm going to close these tabs, and I want you to navigate to activestate.com/Komodo-edit, and we're going to download Komodo Edit. So go ahead and click on that download link. You want to download Komodo Edit, not the IDE. So hit download and download Komodo Edit 8 for whichever system that you're on. Of course, I'm on a Mac, but it does work for Windows and Linux as well. So download it, go through the installation process. It's pretty straightforward as far as most installation. If you have any issues, send me a message. Otherwise, we are going to open up Komodo Edit and add our Django project into there. Opening up Komodo Edit is going to look like this. Some of the files and stuff like that is probably not going to be there, but and if that's not there, you can just kind of click on these little tab things here, and of course you can play around with Komodo Edit as much as you want. But we're going to make a new project. So under Project, we go to New Project, and we want to scroll into our desktop and then into the actual folder that we just made, which was Skillshare. And in here, I'm going to call it Skillshare and then .Komodo Edit. And as you notice, it now says it here, and then down below it'll say projects, and it will say the Komodo Edit project in there as well. Next thing, what we want to do is, we talked about this MVP landing, these two folders. It's a little confusing, so I actually want to change it, and I'm going to rename that first one, that very top one, to SRC, standing for source. This just makes it a little bit easier for us in distinguishing which is which. So now in our settings, we open up our settings file, and this is the default of where you're going to be going for changing settings and all those different types of things. Now, base directory, what this is saying right here is it's getting the file, so the file that we're at, and then the directory name of that file, and then we have source, which would be the directory name of the one right above that. So base directory, that's what the base directory is, which would be source. And then we have our secret key. This is kind of a key that you don't want to give out, especially in production. Debug, this stuff is for when we run errors, and you'll see that a decent amount when you're practicing. Allowed hosts, this would be like when you go on production wise and you turn debug and template debug to false, you'd want your host here. So like www.codingforentrepreneurs.com, that's that type of thing, or even just codingforentrepreneurs.com, that's what you would want there. Next, we already have some installed apps. We are going to be using this quite a bit going forward, so just keep that in mind. Middleware classes, this is a little bit more of an advanced topic. We're not going to go through it too really at all, but just so you know what it does is middleware classes, it goes through middleware classes first, and then it looks for views and stuff like that in installed apps. So these things are used quite a bit, but you're not going to want to change or comment out any of these. Just kind of leave all the defaults installed. Next, we see our root Url Kampf, and this is where all of our URLs are handled. We will discuss what those are later, but the gist of it is, kind of when you have your .com, like this right here, this full thing is a URL, and there's something that handles each part of that, this URL defines that. So if you go to settings, it's going to look for that URL and then look for something called views that will cover all that stuff. Don't worry too much if you don't understand what I'm saying, but we will put those things in action shortly. This is the full file that I told you not to really play around with, so just kind of keep that as is. And then, of course, it does talk about the databases and the different type of databases that Django supports. The one that we are going to be using by default is SQLite. You can use MySQL or some other ones in production, and I recommend that you probably do that. And we will show you how to put a MySQL database in production on when we get there. And then, of course, it's going to be putting it in the base directory, so that main folder, and then it's going to make a file called db.sqlite3, and we're going to do that shortly. And then if we scroll down, we'll see some other stuff, and then also our static files, so like JavaScript, CSS, those things are our static files, images, things that don't really move or change a whole lot, and also don't work, or aren't directly related to the Django code, because we want those separate. And also static files, of course, are client side, so in the browser of the user. It's not usually on the server side, so like the server is not really processing these things. It's usually the web browser that's processing these things, and then a server might be serving them, but the web browser is processing them. Anyways, so now that we have all this stuff and we kind of understand what's going on here, we are going to finally set up our database by syncing the database. So opening up terminal, we list things out. We are going to make sure that we're in the root, so where manage.py is, and we will do Python manage.py sync database or sync db, and then we press enter. And it creates all this stuff for us. So it's creating database tables here for us, and then it's going to ask you if you want a super user. Absolutely you do, so you say yes, and you can use the default, or you can set a new one, and you can use an email address that you want. codingforentrepreneurs@gmail.com is mine, so I'm going to use that. Since it's a local version, you can use just a basic password. When you go live, I would recommend using some kind of a complicated password. In this case, I used 123, and that's just so I could get it all done and whatnot. So now that we have this super user installed, we have some things already ready to go for Django. So if we do Python manage.py, run server, our server, of course, is going to be ran. And if we open up the server and paste it in there, we see that again. And then if we hit admin, you might see this, that maybe the styling's not there, but the Django admin is now here, and this is something that's built into Django. If we log in, we can see some of the built-in things of Django, and again, if the styling's not coming through, that's okay, but if like the styling as in the colors and all that stuff, if that's not coming through, that's okay, we'll come back to it. But other than that, this is kind of where you'll be able to add certain things to apps that you make. So that leaves us at now we need to actually create those apps. So in the next video, that's what we'll do. So see you then.